In this lesson, we're going to explore growth and the metaskill of Lifeforce. The desire is growth. At its most basic, this is the desire for survival, to be alive. It is also the desire for progress and the idea that tomorrow is going to be better than today. And when we're deeply in Lifeforce, when we're deeply in growth, then we experience emergence. We start with the consciousness, awareness of connection. We move into the individuality of expression and uniqueness. We're this unique point of consciousness. And with purpose, we have synergy through intention, structure, and order. Well, growth wants to break free of this structure. It wants to create something new that wasn't there before. Growth is what animates life. Life force is fuel, it's chi, it's energy, it's movement, it's power moving through your unique self-expression, and it's also desire. Life force is not good or bad. In the iconic Star Wars movie, Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader are both able to use the Force, but it's with intention and how we use it that determines whether it's for good or for evil. Life Force is movement. Movement overcomes the stagnation of inertia, and when combined with purpose, movement with consistency and rhythm creates momentum. It is the thing that allows us to move beyond inertia, or also known as when those moments when we're feeling like a couch potato. The idea is that when we're actually allowing life force to move through us, desire is created. Have you ever noticed when you're in that couch potato mode, there's just not much impulse at all to do anything? There's no desire. And it's a self-fulfilling sort of loop here, where when there's movement, and we allow life force to move through us, we actually then generate desire. And while some traditions say we should shut down desire, with the four forces, we recognize that desire is that impulse to create. It's the bridge and the gap that moves us towards something. And without that desire, we can't actually create, we can't manifest. Creation is bringing something into reality. If you think of a plant growing, it's literally bringing itself into physical reality. More of the plant is being created. Where we sometimes run into trouble with growth and life force is this idea of having to accumulate. You know, there's been a meme running around about the rush to get toilet paper, but at the heart of it is this desire for us to have this idea of abundance and accumulation and to know that we have enough. And we do this with money, with power, with things like collecting, hoarding, the idea of materialism. Actually, at its heart is about wanting to seek more life force. And even the idea of population growth and species, animals, ourselves as humans wanting to procreate and create more of ourselves. This is the drive of life force and the seeking of more. So let's take a closer look at money and this idea of growth and life force in relation to money. If we look at money as fuel and a way of quantifying exchange, it's also the way that we can have more impact. Money is power because it gives you the fuel to impact the world around you and to create, to have choices, to have freedom. It's very often growth and expression are that link there, that as we have desire, as we have more life force, we're able to fulfill more and impact more in the world. Currently in our world, we use money to measure growth in ways that aren't always to our advantage. For example, gross domestic product, we think of that as all the exchange in money that's been handled and what that general idea of production. But what it doesn't measure, for example, is things like health or happiness or the idea of belonging or community social capital. The idea of our impact on the environment or crime. None of those things are included when we only focus on money as growth. So let's look a little bit more closely at what you measure grows. Measuring is what you're paying attention to, and there's some aspect of connection there, right? You're bringing your attention to it and you're focusing on that. But you have to also recognize that what you measure, it can only be measured by what tools you already have. So for example, we couldn't see microscopic life until the invention of microscopes. So any of that information wasn't available to us if you can't measure, for example, radiation levels if you don't have that tool. But just because you can't measure it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So things like ESP, intuition, we don't have the tools to measure that yet. So for a lot of people, it just doesn't exist because we can't measure it. Life force is also about this idea of achievement and improvement. One of the ways we use measurement is to say, okay, let's have improvement, let's keep track, let's have results. The idea of results, winning, awards, and also this idea too of the adrenaline junkie that's always trying to push themselves, right? But there's a dark side to that too. We end up we can sometimes do that to the point where it's really that we don't want to feel. And so we're just going to keep going after our goals so we don't have to feel other things in our lives. Or we have to be better. We have to fix ourselves. We have to be successful and then people will love us. So even the idea of self-improvement built into that is this idea of something's wrong with me or I have to be better. That's often the way we approach it. And that's a slight twist of life force. Also, life force is sexual energy and manifestation. Now, why would you put those two together? Well, sex is all about creating something new. Ultimately, it's procreation. But it's also about that sexual energy is about that drive to create. And it can be channeled and used to create in the world. Think and Grow Rich author Napoleon Hill has a section that's devoted to the idea of transmutation of sexual energy into manifestation, into creation. So one of the quotes, it may be controversial, contention, but sexual energy is the creative energy of virtually all geniuses. There never has been and never will be a great leader, builder, or artist lacking in the driving force of sex. So this idea of eros and charisma and power are all linked to this life force. Often when we have that spark of a new relationship, that idea of eros, oh, I've got them all charged up, we think it's really about that other person. This is the person that's making me feel this way. But in fact, it's simply accessing that energy, that spark, that newness that that person's bringing, that life force, the unknown, eros, and the desire to be known and know another person. In accessing that life force, we have the capability to do that. And it's certainly even more enjoyable when there's two people in that, but it's not about the other person or that person creating it in you. You have access on your own. Closely related to sexual energy, another term for this would be Kundalini energy. I mean, there's so many different words for life force, but Kundalini is this idea of the ecstatic state, where often the images are of a snake moving up the chakra system, or two snakes intertwining around the spine. Even our symbol of the medical profession has these two interweaving snakes. And the idea is that in Eastern traditions, this Kundalini energy is about awakening consciousness and will actually bring you to enlightenment. Another quality and aspect to life force that's really important is this idea of emergent properties. There's something new. There's a new property that gets created. There's something that's unexpected or a whole other new element. So for example, hydrogen and oxygen comes together to create a molecule, but that property of that molecule of oxygen and hydrogen, or two hydrogens and an oxygen, H2O, is water. And the property of wetness wasn't there before in hydrogen or oxygen. While connection is being, that sense of awareness and beingness, growth is all about becoming, the unfolding of who we are, and that leading edge. It's the edge of the unknown. It bridges what is with what wants to happen. It's this idea of breaking free of the limitations of structure. And it's also this idea of life wanting more, of this, we're part of this bigger impulse of life wanting more and to expand, wanting expansion. And I'd like to wrap up this lesson with a clip here from Jurassic Park.